Hi everybody and welcome to Everyday Manna. Today we are going to make a Mexican chicken enchilada type casserole. Could not be simpler. To go alongside that, we're going to make a Mexican coleslaw, and then for dessert we are going to have a blueberry cobbler. And that's actually where we're going to get started because this actually takes the longest to cook. So we're going to get started on our blueberries. Now I have a lot of fresh blueberries here. I'd say anywhere from 6 to 8 cups, just depending on the size of your pan. You can use frozen if that's what you have. I would let them thaw just a little bit to let, in a colander so the excess water can drain out. You can totally use frozen in this, it's fine. Because blueberries aren't the sweetest berry, I'm going to add a little bit of sugar, up to about, I'd say, 1/4 of a cup. I don't want too much. To thicken up the juices that is going to come out, we're going to add some cornstarch to go with that, and a little bit of baking soda. We're also going to zest the rind of a lemon. If you don't have a lemon, don't worry about it because you're not using the juice. You're just going to use the rind. Just add the juice to some water and have some lemonade. Okay? But the zest has so much flavor. It's just delicious. You just want to get that yellow part. You don't want to go down into the white or the pith. That's kind of bitter. Funny story, when I was a little girl, I love, and to this day love oranges. They're one of my favorites. But my mama, I loved the pithy part of the orange. And my mom, I'm little, she'd peel that orange for me, and of course I'd eat the orange segments, but then she would peel out that white part. To this day, I still do that. I love the white part. I don't know why, of an orange. You're going to stir all that together to get that cornstarch and the sugar all combined. This is a lot of berries. I'm going to add just a touch more sugar. That will depend on, how sweet you like it. Up to like 1/3 of a cup would be plenty. You don't want any more than that. And that sugar is also going to help what they call macerate the berries. It's going to help to draw out some of that sugar or the liquid to make the slurry inside the cobbler as it bakes with that cornstarch. It'll mix with the cornstarch and it'll thicken up the juices some. So I think that's fine. We'll set that to the side for just a minute. We're going to make our biscuit topping. Now in this bowl I have some flour, about 1.5 cups or so, a little bit of salt, some baking powders, and I have here some butter. And I'm going to cut, I have 5 tablespoons of cold butter. Needs to be cold. I'm going to go ahead and help myself a little bit by cutting it into cubes, just so it's a little easier. Butter can stick to your knife a lot. And then just drop the cubes into your bowl. And then I'm going to use a pastry cutter, but if you don't have a pastry cutter, you can use 2 knives, butter knives, and cut through it, or your fingers for that matter, and just smush it all together. But I do find a butter or a pastry cutter, which is what this is, cuts the butter into the flour easier. You can also, if your butter is really, really cold, like almost to the point of frozen, it actually could be frozen, you could grate it into your flour using a larger whole microplane. All right, you want it to kind of resemble coarse sand. The big thing is you want to make sure that your butter is all incorporated. Sometimes you'll have to take your fingers and, get the butter off the bottom of the pastry cutter. All right, I think that's good. Okay, you can take your finger, clean hands, and then just kind of, if you don't have one of those, take your fingers and you'll feel the pieces of butter, and you can kind of smush it through there. Okay, we want some sour cream, about a cup. Okay, and some sugar. We're going to stir all that together with another utensil, not that tiny thing. Stir all that together to form a dough. Now, depending, you've heard me say this many times, depending on the humidity of where you are, the room that you're in, it really does affect the ability of the flour to absorb the wet ingredients, and in my case, that is the sour cream. And I can tell you right now, I'm going to need to add either some water or some milk. I'm going to use milk. It just depends. Or you could add some more sour cream. If I can find my milk, here we go. Heavy cream would be good. Half and half would be good. Don't add too much because you want this to be a dough. Let's see what that looks like. I think that's probably going to be great. And if you're, if your area is either, like way dry, you might not even need to add any water. If it's, way moist, or milk, not water, that needs just a touch more. You don't want it too much. You just kind of want it to come together. I would say that's probably about 1/3 of a cup altogether. That's perfect. You see how it just kind of becomes a cohesive dough? That's what you want. If you want to take your hands and kind of work that in, I like to do that. Now, we are going to drop this. This is a drop dumpling. We're going to drop it by the spoonsful onto our berries. Let me show you how we can do that. All right, you can take a spoon of it and then just place it. Now remember, this is going to puff up, so don't place them too close together. We're going to just kind of randomly scatter your dumplings, if you will. If you wanted to make this a full crust, you could. If you wanted to make it into a crumble, like just drop pieces of dough on the cobbler, you could do that too. Either way, it doesn't matter. And this is meant to be a rustic dessert. This is not meant to be a French pastry that, this is a homemade rustic dessert. You could also, if you don't like blueberries, can't imagine anybody that doesn't, but I'm sure that there are people out there who don't. You could use strawberries, you could use blackberries, you could use raspberry. You could use any fruit you wanted and follow this same recipe. You could use peaches, you could use anything. Whatever kind of fruit you like will work. Now, I need to rinse my hands real quick. Our oven is preheated to 350 degrees. I'm not worried about getting all of that off, just a little bit. Now I'm going to take some milk, and if you don't have any extra milk, you could use an egg beaten or heavy cream, half and half, just something to put on top of these dumplings. Okay. Your oven is at 350, and then I'm going to use sugar in the raw, which is like a turbinado sugar, and I am going to top these. What this kind of sugar does is it adds a little crunch. If you don't have any of this, let me show you what this looks like. Let me get a kind of you see how it's kind of crystal and a bigger granule, if you will? I love it. On top of scones, on top of baked goods of any kind, and I'm just going to scatter this one also because I love the texture of this sugar. It doesn't really dissolve, it just crunches up, if you will, and it adds another level of texture to your food. I'm going to clean up, pop this in a 350-degree oven. It needs to bake for at least 45 minutes, maybe even up to an hour until those dumplings are done. When I come back, we're going to get started on the salsa for our chicken casserole. I'll be back in just a minute. Alrighty, now our blueberry dumplings are in the oven, and we're going to get started on a homemade salsa. If you don't want to do this and use jarred salsa, by all means you can. I have here some tomatoes that I'm just going to have. Now I'm using plum tomatoes because they don't have a lot of seeds. You don't want to, if you're going to use a tomato, like a big juicy ripe tomato that you grow in your garden or whatever, make sure that you seed them because the seeds will just burn and it'll be bitter. You don't want that. But this does not have a lot of seed in them. That's why I like plum tomatoes for any kind of roasting. Okay. I'm going to roast mine first. Some people do this, some people don't. I like to. I have one jalapeno. How much, how big, how small is completely up to you, but I am going to take the seeds out because I don't want them to burn, number one, and I do want to reduce the heat. And this is where your heat is in a jalapeno or any hot pepper, is in the seeds and that little membrane. If you are not used to working with hot peppers, please wear gloves to do this. I am used to it, so I don't need to wear the gloves, but you make sure you are if you're not used to it. I'm going to just cut it into strips and then again in half, because at the end, when this gets charred, which won't take long because we're going to use the broiler, I'm going to put it in my blender. If you have some fresh garlic, I would add my garlic cloves to this. I don't have any fresh garlic, so I'm going to use this. So I'm just going to put this in my blender when it's time to, mix up the salsa. You don't even need to add salt and pepper at this point. I have my broiler on high. You are going to need to watch this depending on how hot your broiler is. I like to keep mine a little lower because it's a little easier to, not burn it. If it's right up against it, it'll cook quicker, but it will also burn. So I have a large skillet here that I'm going to preheat to medium-high. I have a couple of cups of rotisserie chicken that I've just shredded up. I have an onion and a zucchini, and I think I only need one zucchini because these were big. If you have a smaller zucchini, you might want to use two. We're going to dice this up. Let's go a little smaller with the zucchini. Cut them into, that one's small enough, all right? Just cut them into bite-sized pieces because they're going to bake, but we're going to saute them first just a little bit. I love zucchini. If you don't, you can leave it out. You could add a red pepper to this if you wanted to. Again, I'm not because my corn has red pepper in it. This was a fairly large onion, so I just am using half, but you Measure with your heart on this one. If you want more onion, put more onion. Up to you. I do want it in decent sized pieces. I don't want tiny little pieces of my onion. Now I'm going to add a little bit of oil. I'm using olive oil, but you could use canola or vegetable would be fine. A couple of tablespoons. You need some fat. Fat is flavor. I am convinced. No one will ever change my mind on that one. Not a fan of low fat, fat-free, anything, because that fat is the flavor, and I don't want to eat things that don't taste good. I'm going to add my zucchini, and I just want to saute this for a minute. It doesn't need to cook for very long, just a little bit. So let's let that go for just a minute. I am going to add a little bit. Nope, that's the wrong one. That's from a salsa. I didn't get it out. Let me just do this. Little bit of salt and pepper. Mine is freshly ground pepper, by the way. I've showed you this many times. I use a little tiny coffee mill, totally dedicated to peppers. And I grind up some at a time, or I use my pepper mills. I collect pepper mills, so I have quite a few. Love them. I don't know why, I just love pepper mills. I guess because I love pepper so much. All right, I have one little tiny can of diced chilies, and I have a can of corn. And now mine is Southwest corn. If you have regular whole kernel corn, or you could use frozen corn, I would probably add a red pepper or, you know, a jar of pimentos or something like that to this. All right, now we can't forget our salsas under the broiler. Okay, we're just gonna let that go for a second. Let's look at the salsa, see where we are. Doesn't take it long, needs a few more minutes. So we're gonna saute this. I just wanna kind of get them started. Again, I have some chicken here. This is just a couple of cups of rotisserie chicken. Leftover chicken is the perfect thing for this dish. Love, love, love rotisserie chickens. I get mine usually at Sam's. If you're near Costco, they also have them, the big ones. And they're like less than $5. I think they're $4.98 or something. You could easily get 2 whole meals out of one. Easy, not a problem at all. I also have some green enchilada sauce. I have 2, I don't know if I'm gonna need both or just one, because I have the little jar, but you might need 2. And for my tortillas, I'm trying to watch my carbs, so I have the 0 carb, the little mission corn or flour tortillas. You use whatever kind of tortilla you like. By the way, if I can figure out which direction that's going, I keep my tortillas in the freezer, and that way, you know, because I don't eat them every day, and what's left over, just wrap them up and pop them in the freezer. These were in the freezer, and they're fine. I have 2 packages. I'm not sure how many I'm going to need of the little ones. All right, we just want to saute this again. Just kind of want to take the raw edge really off of the tomatoes mainly. If you are using a roasted red or a red bell pepper or a green bell pepper, make sure that you add that in at that point. Now we're gonna mix all of this together. I need my salsa to get down. Tell you what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna take a quick break. Just gonna watch that, and when that's really, really charred, I'll bring it out, and then I'll show you how we are gonna finish up this dish and get started on our Mexican slaw. Be back in just a minute. All right, now our tomatoes and the jalapeno are charred. I just popped them into my blender with the garlic, the salt, and pepper. I'm squeezing the juice of a couple of limes in here because I want that acidity. Oh, so good, so good. I love lime juice. All right. That just fell on my toe. That's all right. Oh, this blender sometimes gives me a fit. I can never remember which direction it goes. We're going to just blitz this up. I don't like my salsa thick or chunky. I prefer my salsas to be, oh, smells so good, a little tiny bit on the runny side. We're going to pour this into the bottom of our casserole dish. All right. Then we're going to add the rest of our ingredients. I have some chicken there, the chicken there. I'm going to add my sauteed zucchini and onion. I could just eat that right there on its own with nothing else and be happy. I'm going to add my diced green chilies and my drained can of Southwest corn. We'll stir all that together. If I can find there we go. You know, I think my problem is I get in too big a hurry and I make messes because I'm in such a hurry. Now, here, I am not a fan of cilantro. If you are, use cilantro. I'm just using flat leaf parsley because I really just don't like the flavor of cilantro. You could add some parsley to your salsa if you wanted to. Now, you want to make a layer of your tortillas. They can overlap, that's fine. All right. Then we're going to add a little bit of our green enchilada sauce. A little bit of, if you like Monterey Jack, you could use that. I'm using Colby Jack. A little bit of cheese. Then some of our chicken mixture. We're going to make 2 layers. I'll show you how to do the first. Okay. It smells so good. I'm telling you, this will be a crowd pleaser. This is the perfect little casserole dish to take to a gathering of some sort. Now, I'm going to add some feta. If you don't want feta in yours, you can not. You can use the Monterey Jack. But I love feta cheese. I love the tang it adds. If you have the Mexican grating cheese, the Oaxaca cheese, you could use that too. Going to add another layer of tortillas, and we just want to end with cheese. Make sure you end with your cheese. So I'm going to pop my enchilada sauce over my tortillas and repeat the processes, ending with the cheese. All right, now our casserole is ready. I forgot to tell you to add some chili powder or taco seasoning, some cumin, and I added some garlic powder because I don't have any of the fresh garlic. I just repeated the layer. Make sure you top it, that your final layer's cheese, and pop this in the 350-degree oven about 30 minutes. Oh, there's my, you know, I completely forgot I had you in there. All right. This cooking show doesn't have a backup team, so we actually get to wait on that to cook. So I have here, for some Mexican slaw, a bag of coleslaw mix, 1 can of the Rotel or diced tomatoes with chilies, a can of drained corn, and a can of drained and rinsed black beans. If you like it extra hot, dice up another jalapeno, add a little bit of salt, and then for our dressing, I have some sour cream and some mayonnaise, and I'm gonna add the juice of a lime. Lime goes so well with Mexican food. So delicious. Okay, and I'm also gonna add a couple of teaspoons of just taco seasoning. That's it. And then I'm gonna stir all that together. Now, this will seem a little tiny bit dry because number one, I like my slaw to be a little less runny, but we're gonna let this set for a few minutes and the salt will draw out the moisture from the cabbage, which will, add to the dressing. Cabbage has a lot of water in it. And then you just stir this together with a bigger spoon than what I got. And or you can use tongs, either one. Stir it together and let it sit in the refrigerator is best for a couple of hours. And this will keep for several days in your refrigerator. And you will have a wonderful, spicy Mexican coleslaw. Alrighty, everything is done. Here is our blueberry cobbler. It is so hot, I'm not gonna touch it, but here's our little dumplings on top and our blueberries, this sauce has just been bubbling away. It looks and smells amazing. The top of these will be nice and crispy because we put that sugar in the raw demerara, that brown crystal type sugar. If you don't have any of that, you can use regular white sugar. Here is our Mexican chicken enchilada casserole. I just topped it with a little bit of parsley just to make it look prettier. That is so hot. That needs to set up probably about 10 minutes before you cut into it. That's amazing, and that is the perfect thing. You could make 2, pop 1 in the freezer. And then here is our Mexican coleslaw. The cabbage has released quite a bit of water, so I stirred it all together and just put it in a nice pretty bowl and topped it with just some chopped up parsley. If you like cilantro, by all means, replace my parsley with your cilantro. But these are some quick and easy dishes that you can make in your home. So thank you for joining with me, and I will see you next time on Everyday Manna.